Listen up.
Welcome to the PowerShell Podcast, the podcast for PowerShell and the PowerShell community. And now, here's your host, Andrew Plaw.
Welcome to another episode of the PowerShell Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Plaw, at Andrew Plaw Tech, and some cool stuff is happening in this lovely 2025 new year. And if you haven't yet, join the PDQ Discord, discord.gg/PDQ, because every single Wednesday we have PowerShell Wednesday. And I'll share more about this as the days come, because currently we're recording this a little bit in the past. But yeah, every single Wednesday we'll be having a community event of some sort where we get together, we learn from someone, we share, or we have some kind of fun thing going on. So check that out in the new year. Woohoo. Very excited for that. And today we have a pretty awesome episode with a fantastic guest. And this is someone who I ran into at PowerShell Summit in 2024, earlier this year, an identity expert. Welcome to the podcast, Evgenij.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here.
Yeah, I wanted to interview you in Seattle, but the weeks get kind of busy. So I'm very pleased that we could have circled back to this. So I appreciate you joining me.
Definitely.
And this has been a pretty busy year for you. I've seen you talking at a lot of conferences. So what have you been up to? Where have you been speaking? What have you been talking about? What's been going on in your world?
Yeah, well, it started at the summit with like some best practices talk, and then my home conference is the PSConf EU, where I talked about enhancing Windows Admin Center and doing secure connections when there is no common security infrastructure between the source and the target, this sort of stuff. Basically things that, or at least that other topic, things that everybody runs into every now and then. And then my last one was a month ago or 2 weeks ago at the PS Saturday in Karlsruhe here in Germany, where I talked about calling PowerShell commands and scripts from native .NET code. I did the reverse 4 years ago for the online version of the PSConf EU, because we were in the pandemic back then. And I did a long talk on calling native code from PowerShell. And then I've circled back all the way to calling PowerShell scripts from web applications or Windows services written in C# mostly, but that works with any .NET-based language.
Sounds like you've had some fun this year. And you know what I didn't do? I didn't properly introduce you. So I'm going to read your bio because I think it does a little bit to paint the picture of sort of your identity in the PowerShell community. And here we go. Evgenij has been working with computers since the age of 5 and delivering IT solutions for over 25 years. His Active Directory and Exchange background naturally led to PowerShell, of which he's been an avid user and proponent since its first release. OG status. Okay. Evgenij is an active community leader at home in Berlin, a leading contributor to the German self-help forums, and an experienced user group and conference speaker. That's true. We heard about a lot of them. He is a cloud and data center management MVP since 2020. He is the author of Building Modern Active Directory, released by A-Press in 2024. Congratulations. He's got it on hand. He's ready to go.
Thank you.
Wow, that was cool. I need to start reading more bios. I don't typically read them, but that was a trip down memory lane, I'm sure, for you. Pretty long career you've had leading to where you are now, and now it seems like you're pretty community focused. So excited to hear about that. How was the recent PowerShell Saturday? Can you say the name of it again? Like, how was the experience? I talked to Christian before it happened, but I haven't talked to anyone who went.
Yeah, it was awesome. Great organization. Everything was in place. Catering, speakers, organizations. We had about 70 attendees, which is great for PowerShell Saturday. Unfortunately I had to leave after lunch for personal reasons, but what I saw until then was of the highest quality. yeah, that was a great little event. I hope Christian and Heike will be able to repeat the performance, and I hope to be part of it next year.
Yeah, I think Emrys helped with that also. Emrys McAnally. But it was really cool to see. You know, obviously I didn't get to go to it because it's a little far away. But it was cool to see. It looked like a lot of great sessions, a lot of people in each session. So it's always cool.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
Is 2025 going to be the year of the PowerShell Saturday? Because I would love to see PowerShell Saturdays take off. Because I have seen people with SQL Saturdays. Actually, someone reached out to me recently. Oh, I should give it a good old proper plug, perhaps at the end of the episode. But someone reached out to me recently about a SQL Saturday in Atlanta, and they're wanting to do a PowerShell track. So if anyone out there would like to speak, I believe it's in March, around March 8th. There's a PowerShell Saturday in Atlanta, and they're looking for PowerShell sessions. So I will have a link to the CFP below. But yeah, I would love to see this sort of rise of the smaller PowerShell conference, the smaller, more, localized, a lot more maybe speakers who are maybe not attending the big ones. That would be really cool.
Yeah. We had the PowerShell Saturday in Hamburg 2 years ago, I think. We had a PowerShell Saturday in Hamburg just before the pandemic hit. Actually, days before we were all prohibited from traveling. We got to meet one last time in Hamburg.
Oh, I think I talked about that with somebody on a podcast at some point. Yeah. Well, fast forward a few years, and hey, we're back at conferences here and there. So that's cool. But I want to talk about some of the things you've talked about. And that is cross-platform PowerShell. So what's your background with cross-platform PowerShell, and what did you end up exploring in that?
Yeah, well, I got into cross-platform automation around 2015 when I was tasked with actually a groupware migration from like 5 or 6 distinct open source facilities to Exchange. One of those systems was doing mail. One of those systems was doing calendar. They had all their Thunderbird clients, where some of them had calendars, some of them had contacts, some of them had mail, and some didn't. And all of that, it was a large state agency. They had to be migrated into Exchange on premises back then. And to facilitate that, I used like Linux sort of connectors that I pilfered from an open source repository. Well, I forked from an open source repository. It was open source, so it wasn't pilfering as such. I just used that, but to automate that and to automate swinging the users, switching the mail flow, because the postfix configurations had to be updated when they switched their primary to PowerShell. So there was a lot to orchestrate, and some of that was in the Windows part of the world, in Active Directory, in Exchange, stuff I knew inside and out. But the other part has to be accomplished in Linux, and the guy who knew how to do that was making himself rare. He was nearing retirement. Day by day, he was basically counting down the days, which was the compelling event for that very project. If he stayed on, they would probably have kept the open source systems for the foreseeable. But since nobody else knew how that stuff works, and he was leaving, that had to be migrated. And in the federal state of Berlin, migrated meant to Microsoft stack, because that was what Berlin standardized on. And I had to orchestrate all this stuff. Had to deal with Linux file formats, line breaks, big ending, little ending, UTF-16, UTF-8, all this sort of stuff, process management, elevation in remote sessions. And that was fascinating. And the most fascinating thing about that project, that will sound like bragging now, but the most fascinating thing was I created a small web portal for them to sort of control that migration, and then I showed them how to use it and went away. That's the way of the consultant, right? And then they didn't call for 3 years. And I thought, you screwed up. They threw that all away and just started with empty mailboxes, just started from scratch. And maybe they are still using those open source systems. But 3 years later, my phone rang, and they asked me to schedule 2 days for them to remove the migration environment because they were done. So that was a product that I wrote. 90% of that was PowerShell. The rest was PHP and Bash. That survived unmanaged for 3 years and migrated like 4,000 or 5,000 mailboxes to completely different systems. So that's how I got into cross-platform automation, and we did not have PowerShell core at that time. So even installing PowerShell on those systems, I mean, they wouldn't have let me do that. But even thinking about installing PowerShell on those systems and doing PowerShell remoting to them was completely out of the question.
Okay, so this was before PowerShell core?
2015. Yeah, I think it came out 2016 or thereabouts, or maybe it was 2015, but it wasn't generally available or something. So I guess it was before PowerShell core. But again, installing a Microsoft product on Linux machines in a state organization, that just was not happening. So yeah, I had to use other means to get to those systems remotely, and yeah, that worked out pretty well. And then there were such engagements down the road, deployment, automation of like software installations, automation of network migrations, which in Linux is easy to do, but if you have to do that at scale, still poses some challenges. And yeah, automating that in PowerShell was part of my job while still in consulting. Now at Semperis, where I work, we have components in our products that are based on Linux. So I have to do automation across the Windows-based components and the Linux-based components to get the most, or to let our customers get the most value out of those products. That's what I do on a regular basis these days.
So you're an AD expert pretty much full time.
Yeah.
And that's the type of thing you could work in AD for the rest of your career. Like, it is just something that is so ingrained. It's not one of those technologies that's just going to disappear. So is that something you're planning on doing? Are you planning on being an AD person for the until you're done, or are there other maybe potential?
My book has the subline of engineering, building, and running Active Directory for the next 25 years. So I have to stick around for at least 25 years to let everyone take me up on that bet. But no, I'm not planning that far into the future. According to the German retirement law, I have to do another 15 years. I will probably keep working after that, but whether it will be Active Directory or whether it will be PowerShell or anything else entirely, I don't know. If you asked me 15 years back what I would be doing in 15 years, I would definitely tell you I would never become an MVP. I would definitely tell you I would never speak at conferences or work for a software company, because I was service oriented to the extreme. I thought the only way to honestly earn money in IT is by providing service, by basically exchanging your lifetime for money. And look where I am now. So I'm not taking any bets besides 25 years.
25 years of AD. There you go.
Yeah.
Now, So it sounds like you sort of accidentally specialized. Like you kind of just followed your passions and then accidentally now you're kind of
definitely
really good at AD. Okay, cool. I want to back up though. You said you never thought you'd be an MVP. How did you find yourself in the point where you were in consideration? Now you are one. Like, how did that sort of transpire?
Well, as an IT person, I love helping people. And helping people for 8 hours a day, Monday to Friday, was not enough. So I started helping people on self-help forum. Oh, at this point, I have to actually circle back to where it started. It all started in 2005 or maybe 2006, when I was looking for guidance on terminal services. And I came across a book by Krista Anderson, who was the principal worldwide expert on terminal services at that time. And that book did not deliver the answer I was looking for. But the book was from the Mark Minasi series. And that was the first time I heard the name. Not being from the US, Mark Minasi did not mean very much to me. But I looked that person up. I looked the community up, and that was the greatest online community to this day that I've ever experienced on the internet, the Mark Minasi Technical Forum. And then I got to know Mark, and Mark became a great friend and mentor. So Mark Minasi's Technical Forum was basically where my community career, my community affiliation started, because the German IT community was a very rough patch at that time. You got flamed, you got banned, you couldn't speak out against certain people, no matter what they were posting. It was not a very welcoming community if you did not belong to the inner circle, which I didn't. And this US-based community of completely random people from around the world, and we had great folks there. We had Aidan Finn was a leading contributor. Willem Karstorp from the Netherlands. Nathan Winters. We had such marvelous folks. Some of them are friends to this day. Some of them are fellow MVPs. Some of them are co-workers. Darren Marilia was on that forum, the GPO guy. He's our VP of product here at Certs right now, and basically the reason I joined the company. So it was a great welcoming atmosphere, and that's where I started more or less helping people as a calling, not just accidentally sharing a tidbit of knowledge. So I probably spent more time on the forum than I spent doing my daily work. And that's where it all started. And it led to me being one of the 2 or 3 contributors left standing to the German TechNet forum from Microsoft, because they all but closed down the English version by that time, but the German was kept afloat, and there were like 3 people who posted there. One for SQL, one for I don't know what, business applications, and me. I did all the Windows questions, all the AD questions, all the Exchange questions, and all that other stuff. And Danny Reining, a long years PowerShell MVP, was on that forum too and did PowerShell stuff. Denver was the one who nominated me to become an MVP. So that's how it all came about. I was in consideration for quite a while, for around 4 years all in all. Founded 2 user groups in that time, the Exchange user group that I ran together with Thomas Stensitsky, and the PowerShell user group Berlin that I run alone. And if anyone who's listening want to speak at our user group meetup, hit me up. You're very welcome. We're always looking for speakers. So at some point, the product group decided that I'm worthy, and that was 2020.
Wow, interesting. So it sounds like the classic pay it forward. Like you were helped out by a community, and then you realize, like, wait, just kind of keep passing it on now that you've gotten to a better spot. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
it's a good thing for those out there listening who maybe haven't done that yet, or maybe they're more on the beginner side of things. It's a great thing to emulate, and it brings a lot of joy, I've found. Not only does it help people, but it makes your life a little bit better. You're going to be working anyways. Long listeners know I always say this. You're going to be working for a significant portion of your life. You might as well do it in a way that brings you joy and does the most amount of good, because you're going to be doing the work anyways. Let's have the biggest impact we can. That's what I say. So awesome. So pretty community-focused fellow you are. And I have not heard anyone reference the Mark Manassi Technical Forum. I think that sort of predates me a little bit. In terms of whenever I started in IT. So interesting to hear about that. I know Mark Manassi's a legend, but again, it was sort of like a little bit before my time.
Yeah. Forum got defaced quite badly in 2009, I think, or maybe 2010. And then Mark shut it down. We talked about reviving it. There was a new version on a different platform, but it never got the traction we used to have back in the day. So, yeah. And Mark was closer and closer to retirement. He's living in Florida now. There was no driving force behind it, and people drifted apart. Some even left IT. I recently met someone from the UK who was a big part of the forum during my active time there. He is working for IT companies, for software companies, for data companies, but as sales. He was a technical guy in 2009. Now he is 100% sales.
He wants money.
Probably.
You see people make that transition, some of them at a certain point where they kind of just pivot into sales. It is what it is.
Yeah, not going to happen to me, I guess.
What about a sales engineer or a technical sales engineer? Would you ever do a role like that?
Yeah, that's what I do right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's another common transition I see, is where you're sort of part of the sales team, but you're the technical expert who really knows the product, who has the background. Yeah. I think that's an interesting role to work at, is to work at a tech company. Was this your first software company you've ever worked at?
Yes.
Interesting. It's interesting, isn't it?
I owned a small software company consisting of myself and one programmer in like 2006 or 2007, maybe. We did not produce off-the-shelf products. It was all like custom-made connectors or custom-made stuff, mostly for the real estate industry. But it did not last very long. It was like 2 years.
Okay. I guess to be more specific, now you and I both work, and that's why I'm interested in probing. We both work for software companies that make software for IT people. Is that fair to say? Yeah. So what has that been like? Like, what have you learned from being a customer of tons of products, and now you actually work at a company that delivers a product? Not to be too specific about whatever y'all do, but just what have you seen from working at a tech company like that?
Being part of the PowerShell community exposes one to all the dev stuff, because many in the community are developers and work in those dev and DevOps organizations. So you get accustomed to that speak. So nothing I experienced at Sampras after I joined came as a surprise. It came as a confirmation that people who you deal with on the outside, that's actually the life they're living in their daily job. So yeah, I was not surprised too much with what I found on the inside. But yeah, it's a different situation altogether, because if you find that a certain feature just sucks, and that happens with the best of products, right? Something that someone has come up with just doesn't make any sense from your perspective. As a customer or as a trusted advisor of a customer, you just tell them, throw that away. Or negotiate that they rewrite it if the customer is big enough. Here you are on the side that is meant to deliver that. So it's a different situation, but that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. The observation I've had working at a company like this is how interested they are, like the people who are working on the product, the PMs and things like that, how interested they are in the customer experience and getting that feedback. Whereas before working in a company like this, I had never filled out any feedback forms, never did any of them, not once, never, because I just assumed, I don't know, no one's ever going to read this. Then you work and you're like, oh no, yeah, they definitely read it. And some places sort of use that in a pretty major way. Yeah. Fun times. What is give a gift to the people. What's a random project or something that you enjoy? Not a PowerShell module though. Maybe it's a plugin, maybe it's a website. Give us a tip.
Done by someone else?
Could be you. Could be you.
And so if you stick with things that do not cost money, then I guess my favorite project of the last 5 years is Tame My Certs. Tame My Certs by Uwe Gredenegger, who happened to be a coworker in the early 2010s at CGI, and then he went on to Microsoft, and I went on a different way. Uwe is a great guy, and he built this policy module for ADCS that allows you to sort of put a more deterministic framework around your certificate templates. Tame My Certs. Everybody who's running ADCS should have that. It's free. It's very well developed. It's being actively managed. It doesn't break anything, or let's say it will not break any functionality that you do not configure. If you start a configuration for a certain template, it might break your flow based on that template. Absolutely, but then it's up to you to detect that and to repair that in your configuration files. Oh, great little project. I recommended that back when I was still in consulting, and I'm recommending that still to our customers as a first hardening measure before you start thinking about other processes. Remove the web services, or at least remove the enrollment portal from 1969. You will not need that because there is no browser left standing that is able to load ActiveX control to actually receive a certificate from that web page. And that's vulnerable to at least 2 known attack vectors. And put Tame My Certs in place and configure the basic restrictions for your templates so that no one can request a computer certificate for your tier 0 systems, and no one can request a Kerberos certificate for your domain admins. And then it's a great leap forward in terms of security. And then you could pivot to different things and then circle back and maybe harden that a little bit more. Great little project.
Awesome. Yeah, that I've never heard of that. That is a big takeaway. So if you're in the ADCS space, which I think we've had a few episodes about certificates and ADCS. But yeah, if you're in that space, check out Tame My Certs. I'll have some links in the show notes. I think docs.tamemycerts.com is one. And then there's also a GitHub project for it called Tame My Certs. Wow. I love tools like that where it's just like such an easy win, and it's free too, like the community ones. Love that.
Yeah.
All right. Active Directory. You know a thing or two about AD. You've been in IT for 25 years. We get it. But let's turn that into something actionable for those of us who are out there. So maybe we have an IT environment. We didn't create it. Maybe we did. But say we have some kind of environment, and it's we can fairly assume that it's not in the best state, right? We don't actively do anything. We don't inspect it. We just kind of like don't look, no problems.
Yeah.
What should we be looking at? What should we be thinking about when we're looking to sort of take control of our AD and make sure things are a little bit secure?
Yeah, well, given where I work, I would, of course, recommend that you start by running our Purple Knight tool, free assessment tool for your Active Directory security posture, and that is using PowerShell under the hood. All the individual checks are PowerShell scripts, so you could take a look at them ahead of time, see what they will be doing with your environment, make sure that there are no write operations involved with this assessment, and then once you're satisfied, you just run the tool, let it create a report, and then if your assumption was solid that your environment is not in a very good state, then you have your to-do list in that report of most critical measures that you have to put in place in order to improve your security posture. And while you're doing that, there is time to think about more fundamental things like removing NTLM from your environment. I talked about that last year at B-Sites in Berlin. It's a major undertaking, even in a smaller infrastructure. And if you are in a manufacturing business, you will probably encounter much more pushback and much more obstacles than if you are amongst, knowledge workers or in a government or something. But we all have to do that because this is just evil. This is exploitable. This cannot be modernized to be not exploitable. Microsoft showed us that they can enhance Kerberos, but nobody can enhance NTLM. So NTLM needs to go, and that's what you also need to start thinking about. And all these other things. Look at your certificate services. The most I saw in one organization, that was a hospital, and in their Active Directory forest there were 13 enterprise PKI trees, trust trees registered, of which 7 were still alive. So basically, every external contractor who came in to install some sort of system that needed certificates started by installing a certificate authority. And they were all, because the Windows Enterprise CA starts by putting its certificate into the anti-auth store, they could all be used to generate a Kerberos certificate for every other user in the environment, including your most privileged identities. So start with the low-hanging fruit with high impact. Purple Knight, you could use Pink Castle, you could use any of the other free tools, but you don't have to pay any money for the first step. Just get a look around. You will see what the top 5 of the impactful vectors are. Remediate those, and then you can start shopping for tools, commissioning external assessments, and all those sorts.
I have a hidden step 1, I think. Step 1, clear it with your boss or security team. Step 2, use some kind of tool that can audit your setup and see sort of the list of things that are vulnerable. And then you have that checklist of small things that maybe you can work on, but you also need to sort of longer term plan for things like moving NTLM and some of the things that you determine are going to impact multiple teams kind of situation. Cool. Hey, that sounds like something we can do out there.
Sure.
I think
if you need a master plan for that for the next 25 years, read my book.
Check it out. Link in the show notes. But yeah, I think it's helpful because I think there's so many orgs out there that, again, unfortunately have not taken any steps towards understanding maybe where they are being vulnerable. They just don't look. So if you are an organization that falls into that bucket, well, there's hope for you. And if you're not an organization that falls into that bucket, well, then congratulations. But keep pushing it forward. There's always more we can do. That to-do list, unfortunately, seems to never actually end. So just smile and keep grinding. Yeah, they say security is easy, right? Oh, well, maybe not.
Yeah. maybe not.
But it keeps us employed, so that is a good thing. That is one of the benefits. Now, say we're going to be planning 80 from scratch, right? So we have a new company or something like that, and we want to sort of make this sort of future-proof and do things the right way. What should we be considering? Anything in particular? I mean,
start. That's what I also am talking about in my book. Start from the state you desire to be your future state. Start without NTLM. Start without weak encryption. Start without over-permissioned identities or groups. Start by if you're large enough, and no one knows what large enough is, but if you think you're large enough, start by putting Red Forest in place. They all say ESAE is dead, but you can't do better than with a Red Forest to basically keep your highest privileged identities out of your production forest that could be compromised. Start by formulating that vision. And then the second, that is something I learned by pain. That is something I learned the hard way, that you should not have to improvise if a requirements surfaces that needs you to reduce your security posture. You have to have, at least for the changes you can foresee, you should have pre-canned answers that are tailored to your environment, to your organization, to your management tooling, to your hierarchy of making decisions, and so on and so forth. And that makes many things simpler. If some department comes to you and say, so we need this application, we more or less procured that application, but that would require you to do X, Y, and Z, and you know at once it's detrimental to security. The worst thing you can do is start scratching your head in search of a solution. The best thing you can do, you pull up a drawer, pull out a laminated list with typical sort of business requirements and typical pre-canned solution proposal. And then you go all the way down to where that application is, and then on the right, it says, you need a separate forest. It cannot have a trust to production, and the operation of that forest will be built to the department that is procuring this shit. It doesn't have to be approved. If they see an officially looking document, half of them will turn around and go away and just do their due diligence in search of a more modern application that does the same thing. Of course, the other half will raise hell, so it helps to have those things approved. But yeah, that's something that helps. Not only thinking about like hardening measures and architecture, but also thinking about making exceptions to those in a way that does not put your own whole organization in jeopardy.
That's wise. That's wise. To think about the step after the first step.
Yeah.
You heard it here on the PowerShell podcast. Awesome. Wow, that was wise, because I think that's where a lot of the challenges with security is sort of actually implementing it, and with that sort of back and forth that can happen with the differing requirements of different teams. It's just one of the many complexities that make sort of security kind of hard, is that it is a lot of people and a lot of technology.
Yeah. And by foreseeing these exceptions, you are also putting a price tag on every one of them. And in many cases, you're able to make a security decision, a business decision. And if the business is prepared to carry the risk to have that machine installed, then so be it. That's their business. They are the ones who will go bankrupt if they get popped. You are the one who will have to update your resume, but then you will have your next job lined up as a matter of minutes, the market being what it is. So you've done your due diligence, and then it's time for everybody else to do theirs.
Yep. These are business decisions at the end of the day. Always a good reminder, no matter how much you want to do things in the most secure way, sometimes that's not the best thing for the business in the short or long term, or, it's our job just to inform the people who make those decisions and of the potential repercussions, and they can make whatever choice they want.
Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think for a lot of people who hear that, they'll be like, oh, yeah, of course. Maybe they have more experience. Other people will think, what? No. That's the joys of IT, is you sort of get to grow a little bit wiser. It's interesting. Yeah. You go into it thinking that technology will solve everything. Just magic. Oh, we're just going to brute force it. Oh, everything is going to be this way because I know what the technical solution is. And then you get into the work world and you're like, oh, wow, no. This is a business. They actually need to do things. It gets confusing. The people element of things always adds a little bit of a wild card factor.
Yeah. And if we're talking about Active Directory, then it's people as much as the technology that earned it that bad reputation it has in security circles, right? It's the people accepting the defaults without thinking. It's the people making wrong decisions when planning, not revising them down the road. And then it's people doing implementational mistakes as well. So it's everybody's fault. It's not Microsoft's fault. It's not Active Directory's fault. It's a team effort, and it must be a team effort for the business to come to a more secure state. You can't just leave people behind because the people are the ones actually earning the money.
AD is such an interesting piece of software in sort of how complex it is. Just and how it's distributed as well is just makes it a very interesting piece of software. And the way it's versioned and things like that.
And we've got a new version this year, right? Server 25. And I talked about that in Seattle, by the way, in my talk, that some of the scripts that do stuff with AD, PowerShell scripts specifically, will break when they start operating against Server 2025, because the functional levels used to be like 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 7, and now we get 10. And if you do an ADSI request, then even integer values will be returned back to you as strings. And if you compare them the wrong way to determine what function level your AD is at, you might end up not getting the correct results. Because 10 compared as script is smaller than 5, as we know. Compared as string.
That's true. Interesting. Gosh. That's IT, though.
So the first products break for exactly that reason. The fix is simple.
There you have it, people. There's always things to keep breaking, name changes, all kinds of things to keep working towards. But you know what I have for you? I've given you some layup questions. I think it's time for some hardballs. I have 3 hardball questions. I have 3 questions here. What is one time something went wrong while on the job, and how did you handle it, and what did you learn?
Oh, well, I don't think I can talk about the worst one, because even after all those years, they will come by and throttle me in my sleep. It was that kind of organization. But I did shut down a server once that was in a high security data center without hardware management attached to it, without power control attached to it. So it was an important server. It was serving a web middleware that played a significant role in that organization's business. Bottom line, it was in Server 2000 days, where the desktop of a server looked exactly the same as the desktop of a Windows 2000 workstation. It was a full-size RDP window. I just didn't, and I wanted to go home. I just shut it down, fully convinced that I'm shutting down my workstation at work. But it still was that in a session, and I've got the call 10 minutes after, but it took us 3 days to find a person who was actually allowed to physically enter that room, because there were armed guards in front of it and stuff, and to turn that server back up. So that was around 2002, I think. That was definitely before Server 2003 time frame. But yeah, that taught me to always change my desktop background.
That's a good tip. Oh my gosh, that sounds stressful.
Yeah,
you were just getting ready to leave too. All right. Well, let's look at young you. With your knowledge now, what is one tip that you would give your younger self when first starting in IT?
I think everybody who considers a career in IT, even if it is as dev ultimately, should spend some time in tech support, and everybody should spend some time running cables, because those two things let you, for the rest of your life, appreciate what you have down the road.
That's fair. All right.
And if you consider a career in psychology, then having done tech support for 3 years could help with that a lot as well.
Yeah, funny.
You learn stuff about people you will never suspect otherwise.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. Can confirm. Okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah, there's people are very interesting. It's fair to say. What are 3 of your favorite modules?
That's a tough one, because I spent a lot of time ridding myself of dependencies, because I spent over let's say actually I never worked in an environment I would control for money. I do have my home environment that I control, obviously. I have my labs at Sampras that I control as well, but those are not earning anybody money. Every time I earned money with PowerShell, it was an environment I had zero control over. So I learned to live off the land, which is why I love Fred Weinman. I love PS Framework. I love to be able to use that more. I did some work, as you may know, around credential storage and distribution, but that was not because I thought secret management module is not enough, but because I kept working in organizations where installing a third-party module was more hassle than creating the functionality yourself. So it's a tough one for me. I use we talked about cross-platform automation at the beginning, and that led naturally to a very, very intensive use of Porsche SSH by Carlos Perez. I love the guy. I love that module. Carlos used to speak at the PSConf. He is not coming so much to Europe anymore. But that's the one module that I use. PSPKI by Vadim Spodans, who happens to be from Latvia, like I am. So PSPKI is a great module as well. But those are 2 I sometimes end up using. Apart from that, I hardly use modules. I absolutely love Active Directory PowerShell module for a variety of reasons. None of my scripts that I produced, like in the last 5 years, use Active Directory PowerShell module, because it doesn't work very well in large environments. It requires different ports and different protocols than what AD is using for its normal operations, and so on and so forth. And there are peculiarities that I learned down the road, but I don't want to have that stuff around me. So I just use .NET classes for AD interaction, and that's awesome. But yeah, Posh SSH and PSPKI are the two modules that you will probably find me using every now and then, because the functionality they provide is more expensive than anything I could create in any reasonable time frame.
Interesting. So you're a Lotl fan, living off the
I'm
land.
a Lotl person.
Nice.
PowerShell 5, ISE,
That's
and basically what's in the box. Because I spend a lot of time in highly regulated industries where you just can't start the requirements process for like PowerShell 7. You know, the project will be long over by the time they approve that, if at all.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on the PowerShell podcast. And thank you everybody out there for listening. If you're walking, if you're driving, whatever you're doing, do it safely. And hey, give us a like, comment, subscription, and maybe rank us 5-star on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. Evgenij, we're on every platform. We're worldwide, bringing PowerShell to the people week after week. And this week, you dropped some knowledge on our audience. And I appreciate you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom and expertise and Active Directory acumen. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And if you're out there, check the show notes. There's a link to the SQL Saturday Atlanta CFP and also the session site, as long as a link to the PDQ Discord, discord.gg/PDQ, and all other kind of fun things that we've been up to. Evgenij, people have liked you. They want to connect with you. They want to tap in. Where can we find you on social media or the World Wide Web?
I do have a blog at it-pro-berlin.de, but it's mostly German. If you want to get in touch, it's LinkedIn or Blue Sky, or Twitter or X. My handle on X used to be CJ_Berlin for as long as I've been using the platform, and I tried to emulate that on Blue Sky, but they do not accept underscores, so it's CJ-Berlin at bluesky.social, bsky social. Yeah, that's the best way to get in touch.
Yep, and I can have links to all that in the show notes. Well, thank you very much, and thank you everybody out there for listening. Until next week.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick.